It's also my grandmother's birthday.
Okay.
But nobody knows who my grandmother was.
No, nobody knows.
Not really. It's not like Abraham Lincoln.
Your grandmother is not Abraham Lincoln.
No, she's not. But
read on.
that's irrelevant. I was going to read these poems from this recent release of Down the Dirt magazine. It's a monthly.
Customer Claudia, your offer is ready to buy. Customer Claudia, your offer is ready.
Down the Dirt magazine, February 2020 issue is called Aurora.
Okay.
They're named after accepted writings within the issue. One of them was called Aurora, so we thought, hey, get the Aurora Borealis on the cover. That would rock.
Nice.
Well, you know, Aurora Borealis.
I know, I just saw that.
The three poems I'm going to read that are in this book are about Abraham Lincoln.
Doesn't rock. What good is it?
Aurora Borealis doesn't rock, literally, but they also appear in this calendar book called Every Event of the Year. It is volume 1 of January through June, so it happens to have the pieces about Abraham Lincoln in it as well. I'm sharing that with you, and I don't know which I will read from, so let me try this one because it is newer. This one is called Lawyering Can Lead to Leading the Country.
Wow, yeah, they're all lawyers, aren't they?
Well, they were in the case for Abraham Lincoln. They were. Let's look at U.S. agriculture. So lawyers to the U.S. presidents. Let's link U.S. agriculture to lawyers to the U.S. presidency. Now, back in the early 1800s, all farming was done by hand, but Cyrus McCormick saw his father work on a horse-drawn reaper, but could speed crop collection eventually by like 100-fold. When his father died, he moved to Chicago in 1847, where he and his brother, through companies, were able to, quote-unquote, mass-produce reapers for farmers. Now, although others claimed patents at the same time, that was when Cyrus McCormick saw John Henry Manny of Rockford, Illinois, who was also making reapers. The Manny reaper would even beat Cyrus McCormick's version during the Paris Exposition in 1855, forcing McCormick to file a lawsuit against Manny for patent infringement. The trial was first set in Chicago and had prominent lawyers on both sides. But Manny's lawyers team needed a local, so they hired this Illinois lawyer, Abraham Lincoln,
Wow.
for their group. And they were sure that he didn't have the right kind of experience. Manny's lawyers, Edwin and Stanton, even said Lincoln was a, quote-unquote, damned log-armed ape, end quote. So although Lincoln was there, he didn't contribute much of anything at all. And when the trial was moved to Cincinnati, Ohio, the lawyers just went there. And they didn't even tell Lincoln.
Wow.
So when Lincoln heard about the move, he thought, wait a minute, I should be there. So off he went and found the trial. But all the lawyers just ignored him. So all this time, Lincoln watched the trial that he didn't even contribute to, the trial that Manny actually won, and Lincoln thought, hey, I should really surge with this lawyering thing. And after a few years, he, well, you know, became the President of the United States. Now, that lawyer, Stanton, ripped on Lincoln back in the day, but after Lincoln became the president, he actually chose Stanton as his Secretary of War.
Wow.
Because back in the day, people didn't automatically choose cronies just like them to serve their own selfish interests to join them, but they often chose people different from them so they could have a well-rounded view on how to serve their country. Novel idea, isn't it, to make the effort to work with the opposition so that the government could actually work. Yeah, is that a crazy story if you think about it?
No. It's the way things used to be until the polarization.
Here's one that's much more better about Lincoln's thing. This is called Underscore the Battles. Also in this book, but I'm reading it from this one. This is more recently
She talks to the camera, she doesn't talk to us anymore.
Huh? Pardon me?
She talks to the camera, she doesn't talk to us anymore.
I talk through books. That's all I do. Sorry. I'll do what I can.
Yep.
Oh, but I have to hear it.
Nicholas, your offer is ready.
Nicholas.
Nicholas, your offer is ready.
These people don't. Dateline, November 1860. Abraham Lincoln is elected the 16th President of the United States of America. Among Democrats, Lincoln won over the Democrats, including Stephen Douglas, who first fought Lincoln in the Lincoln-Douglas debates, which was, guess what, all about slavery, which, of course, Lincoln was against. But over the course of Lincoln's run as president, you might be vaguely aware that he was assassinated. But what you might not know is that the attempts on his life started before he even became the president of the United States.
Wow.
Because the southern states, the states that wanted to secede, weren't fond of Lincoln, and Lincoln knew this, so he thought it would be smart to go on a whistle-stop train tour to Washington, D.C. But fearing his safety early on, he hired Alan Pinkerton and his private security, and his security team finds out there are a lot of people that want Lincoln dead.
Attention aspects with customers. Taylor, your offer is ready at the buy counter.
Taylor. They wanted him dead. The security team then went to Baltimore, one of the stops in the Lincoln's whistle-stop tour, and they stayed at the Barnum Hotel, and they tried to act, quote-unquote, Southern to infiltrate Southerners there. They then found Cipriano Fedinari, a beady-eyed courtesan barber who planned to kill Lincoln. So Lincoln is taking the train on this tour, and they stop in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and Pinkerton says to him that they've got to speed their trip and skip a stop so that he can escape the plot to assassinate him in Maryland. So what do? They remove that hat from Lincoln that he's so well known for. They wrap him up in a shawl, and they claim that he's their invalid brother that needs to get on the train. This way, they thought they'd pass Baltimore before noon the next day, or before that scheduled assassination attempt. But in the middle of the night, while in Baltimore, the train stops. This is true. This is still the case, actually. Why is the train stopped, they wondered. And then they found that Baltimore has a sound ordinance that the trains couldn't run for hours. Lincoln was a sitting duck. He was a sitting duck on this train, whose engines aren't even allowed to run at this hour. So they did the only thing they thought they could do. They got horses and literally hooked the train car up to the horses, and they snuck out of town quiet as a mouse, or quiet as a horse, which is more quiet than a locomotive train. And yeah, they got through Baltimore, and they stopped in Baltimore, Camden Street Station, to join the train to Washington, D.C., which was nowhere to be found. At this point, they could hear all the people all around talking about how terrible Lincoln was, and about how the South will rise. And Pinkerton is stunned that Lincoln is sitting there, hiding near people that want him killed. But thank goodness the Washington train eventually showed up. And at 6:30 a.m., February 23rd, Abraham Lincoln arrived in Washington, D.C., averting the first assassination attempt on his life. And this is a perfect underscore for the battles Abraham Lincoln had to endure.
Pamela, your office ready in the Bible? Pamela?
A lot of people.
Your office ready?
No, he's a local pastor here, so.
He shoulders a century's burden, the burden for first declaring some human beings were anything but human beings. We may look now and find it impossible to believe humans were thought and bought and sold, tortured in a hot box for days. We hear this speech of having a dream for unity, and on some levels it may still be a dream. But after blacks have run companies in the U.S. and run the presidency, we must think that there's nothing any of us can do. Nothing any of us can do. So the fact that this fear founded from servitude and slavery may no longer be a part of our vocabulary, but when it was the norm, Imagine the uphill battle one man had to face to try to convince an entire nation that their property isn't property at all, but living, breathing human beings. What an uphill battle. And oh, he paid for his beliefs.
Another author?
I had a fun one about after he died.
Yeah, why not?
Why not, he says. All right, I'm not. This one is called Joining the Graverobbing Crew.
Wow, they did his grave up.
Oh, you want to hear about it? Well, you just wait and listen.
I can't listen. I'm waiting.
My grandmother's birthday is February 12th, and when I was a toddler, the family would take her out to dinner for her birthday, and we'd all sing happy birthday to her, and instead of singing grandma, oh, ingenious me would always belt out Abraham Lincoln instead. I know Lincoln's not from Illinois, but Illinois is where he's known. I mean, I even kept one of my old custom Land of Lincoln emblazoned Illinois vanity license plates. And Lincoln is known for so many amazing things through his presidency until he died, including attempts on his life. But I also love stories about how people even tried to steal Lincoln's corpse.
Whoa.
Because back in 1875, Big Jim Canali had a really great counterfeiting ring in Chicago. He had a guy named Boyd, and he made the best money. The problems came when the feds finally caught them, and Boyd took all the heat. So Canali's thinking, wait a minute, I'm not making money hand over fist anymore. I've got to get a plan to make some more dough. And so he got an idea. He got a wonderful, awful idea. So he met up his goons at a bar that he owned, the Hub. And that's when he laid out his plan. These two guys would kidnap Abraham Lincoln, steal his corpse, and then hold it for ransom for Boyd's release from prison. And the goons, Mullen and Hughes, thought that this was a great idea, but then they saw someone listening in. You see, this guy, Louis Sweggles, overheard them, and he asked if he could help them out too. The goons thought that he looked like a legit guy, so they asked Sweggles to join the crew, not realizing that Sweggles was actually an informant for the new U.S. agency, the Secret Service, which had only been around for 10 years at this point. But the legislation creating this agency was actually on Abraham Lincoln's desk the night he was assassinated. And really protecting dead presidents sounds like a job for them. Sweggles brings this to Patrick Tyrrell, agreeing to catch these men red-handed. And really, what a way to cement the Secret Service as a true institution in the United States of America. So that night, Sweggles joins the two goons to go to Lincoln's grave, but they're shocked because it's not a grave that they're digging up. Lincoln's in a mausoleum, a sarcophagus, and then a coffin. This must be how rich people or legit presidents are buried, they think. And then Mullins takes out his axe and thinks that the job's a job, and he was about to start hashing everything around to get to Lincoln's body. So Sweggles had to step back, so he goes, hey, wait. Hey, we've got to be careful because we don't want to hurt Lincoln's body, and all that noise will alert all the graveyard owners unless we giving us less time to run. So the goons listened to this guy that they thought was actually legit, and they opted to break into the mausoleum. And when they tried to just lift the whole thing up, which of course they couldn't do, the sarcophagus was way too heavy. So now these goons are trying to figure out what to do. So Sweggles says, "Let me go outside and have a smoke break to think this through." And after he leaves, he signals the Secret Service, who sneaks up. However, one of the Secret Service guys, George Hay, all stoked but all nervous, accidentally fires his firearm. The goons, Mullen and Hughes, hear the gunshot and think that they've got to make a run for it. even as more men are firing in the dark. And that's what's really hysterical about all this, is that the goons got away because it takes so long for the Secret Service to get to the actual grave. The Secret Service thought they really screwed this one big time, but the thing is, Mullins and Hughes had no idea who was shooting at them. So they just went back to the hub, that bar, which is where the Secret Service found and arrested them. Now, I'm really sad that all my years in Chicago I never tried to hunt down the hub, though I think the bar is probably long closed. And so what if I butted in with Lincoln on my grandmother's birthday? Because with these Lincoln stories, it's still cool to remember all these strange details. Crazy things happen just because of Lincoln.
Yep.
Absolutely crazy.
Would have been crazy anyway.
Of course. You know it, man.